Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the co-owner and founder of La Colombe, Mr. Todd Carmichael.
Wow. I guess the first thing, did anyone get an opportunity to try that stuff called draft latte in the tent back there? Draft latte. Here's a little secret about that particular batch of draft latte. It was created in my mind on an airplane when thinking about, we're trying to challenge myself in thinking of new ways to combine these ancient products of milk and coffee, and that's the outcome. That particular batch, I wanted to make a point, came from a beverage can. Those were emptied beverage cans in a draft can and then served through the tap. So I want to make sure you tried that. Now, the next thing is I made notes because I'm famous for getting lost and getting in the weeds and running over time. So I'd like to keep it a little tight because I know that you're all very professional, as I am. I see that I have a countdown clock, which might mean that something is going to explode in 19 minutes and 30 seconds. What I'd like to talk about today is a big one for me. David, who is, in a lot of ways, he doesn't realize this, my mentor, and almost the kind of running dialogue of my life for the last 22 years since I chose Philadelphia to start my business. And that is the man behind Philadelphia Magazine. And so I started thinking of the topics that I'd like to share. I thought, you know what? I'm going to take out that big one. There's one that I've been waiting for to pull off the shelf for a long, long time. And it's a lot about challenge and adventure. I'm famous for doing nutty things, like I was the first guy to ever walk from trek quickly from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole. I've crossed deserts. I drifted for years in the South Pacific. And this is more than just an adventure like that. This is life's challenge. And it's not just mine. I guess I'm going to draw you into this one. It's ours, our challenge. There were times in my life I thought I was facing my life's challenge, but most of the time, can I take this jacket off now? I promised David I'd wear a jacket. Can we check that? That's one checked off. Thank you very much. I told you I could carry it off. Who's got two thumbs and wearing a dove on his back? This guy. But, often those were just kind of like survival episodes, like drifting in the South Pacific. The carryaway or the takeaway from the South Pacific, it's a really frickin' big place. And the currents aren't as predictable as you think. It could be frozen alone in Antarctica. It could be way, way higher than I should be up on top of mountains. It could be looking down the barrel of a gun. But pretty much survival episodes aren't the challenge of your life. Those are just moments that require, a lot of focus, right? And then you calm down a little bit, and you have a big piece of luck. I thought my life's big challenge was going to be my little startup, my life startup, my big work. But you know what? Ultimately, the startup felt a little bit like survival. There's a lot of anxiety involved in it. There's a lot of, sheer exhaustion. But ultimately, eventually, you end up in some normal place. And life is normal. Even if you're growing at 40 or 50 or 60%, it kind of feels kind of normal. It was a couple years ago, and I was in a classroom, a business class, and someone asked the question. Saul Bellows said that truth comes in blows. I don't agree. I think truth comes in unfiltered moments. And I have a lot of those moments, actually, so I must be a terribly honest person. And this person asked me the same question I'd heard over and over again. Todd, what was the biggest hurdle you faced in starting this company as a little seed and growing it to where it is today? Now, recently we kind of passed that kind of $250 million kind of cap region, so now we're kind of going to stick around for a while, kind of size company. And I was going to say, like supply chain, getting coffee out of Rwanda. It was like attracting new people. And instead, I leaned forward on the mic and I said, the biggest challenge? Me. I'm the biggest challenge. And in that way, you are. The biggest challenge in your life is really going to be you. And that wouldn't be the case if stuff didn't evolve so fast. If it was a stagnant environment and it wasn't very competitive, it wasn't very kinetic, then that wouldn't really be your biggest challenge. But take a look outside. For you guys now, the young people now, things are changing so fast, we can't even use the word evolve anymore. It's revolve. It's revolution. I know it's that case in my sector. My sector is food. Food, I love food. Now, why, food? Well, you see, coffee is a seed. It's a roasted seed. And it kind of belongs, it's like a sub-universe within this larger galaxy, which is called food. And food is changing. It's changing so fast that we can call it a revolution. I mean, look around. Let me put it this way. The companies that fed my parents, and when I say feed, keep in mind, this is a big bandwidth here. We pull 1 trillion pounds of food off grocery store shelves every year in this country. 1 trillion. I mean, it makes me nauseous thinking of the word trillion. Add 3 zeros, I don't even know what we call that, right? That's how big 1 trillion pounds of food is. And the companies that fed, that served my parents in one generation with me in the middle will not feed my children. That is a revolution. That's not evolution. That is an upheaval. And this is where I believe the biggest opportunities for us as a city, for you as a person, for my company, can be harvested. It's in revolutionary times that advantage can best be found. And often, sometimes those revolutions are so kind of like big and wide that we don't even recognize them. And they're happening in medicine, it's happening in energy, but it's definitely happening in that one thing that every Homo sapien needs to have to continue the next day, and that's in food. I gotta check my notes to make sure I'm not off track, because I'm starting to get excited. So you're probably gonna say, oh, Todd, you're like Neil Young, you know, you're like the old guy to the hipsters. You inspired all these mustaches. And you probably are gonna say things like, yeah, because they're big companies. Like, I'm the enemy of big, or something. I'm not the enemy of big. You know, but big is a liability. It's a real big liability, because you see, in order to be a revolutionary, in order to be a leader, you gotta have 2 things. You know, you gotta have vision, which a lot of these companies have. I look pretty good in that photo, actually. And you gotta have values. You see, that value bit is a tough thing to hold on to when things get big or bigger. The point is, we've heard this sentence, you know, too big to fail. Well, I think that a lot of times, particularly in food, and why these companies are being left behind, and why they'll only feed my father and my mother, not my children, is that they're too big to lead. They've forgotten what it's like to be a revolutionary leader, to charge out into the future in that space-time continuum that we don't know what it looks like, and really, truly lead with values. I mean, if your company values transportability and shelf life over nutrition, you're probably too big to lead. If your company values sensory manipulation and high-end chemistry over naturally tasting, you're probably too big to lead. If your company values private labeling and co-packing over making and doing, you're probably too big to lead. Philadelphia has a lot to earn and to actually participate in this environment. The reason I think so is because Philadelphia, well, how about this? For the same reasons I came here. I mean, guys, check it. I lived on a beautiful wooden sailing boat in the south of France before I came here, right? I picked this city, and I chose it. Amazing, right? What was I thinking? You know, I picked it, well, there's the practical reasons. I mean, I had to find a city of 3 or 4 million people on the East Coast, you know, with certain supply chains. But mostly, I needed to find one that had a beautiful piece of property that would lease it to a guy like me with no credit, no history, just out of the blue, great suntan. And for 25 years with a 25-year renewable, for about the same amount of money you can lease a car. Okay, I needed to find that. And this city did that for me, gave me my start. But I also picked it because, people, this is the city that invented modern democracy, and that is badass. This city does not recognize how freaking cutting edge it is. I constantly get pulled to New York. So I'm supposed to be seen as a New York company, right? Soho, NoHo, Tribeca, or Chicago wants me to be from there. LA wants me to be from there. Florida, places that we're at. Forget that, man. I am from Philly. The revolution starts here. This is it. And now I'm way off. I'm sure I didn't write any of that down. There's no way I wrote that shit down. Now, we invented some other stuff, right? That really changed the face of food and beverage, but we don't actually embrace it like we should. How about this? We invented the bottle cap. That changed beverage forever. We invented the mason jar. I know, you look back and think, let's make a bunch of glass. No, we changed how we could preserve food over time. This radically altered this country in significant ways. There was this guy, Hershey. He didn't invent chocolate. He did something cooler than that. He invented wrapped caramels. He could put dairy here and suspend it in space and share it with people. This changed food. My wife told me never to mention this one, but the next one, I just think it's badass. We invented candy corn. Fucking candy corn, right? I don't know why that's badass, I just think it is. So we're gonna find our opportunities in upheaval. We're gonna find our opportunities by applying our ideas and our values and our visions to a time of revolution. We're going to find those opportunities here. Look at guys like Stephen Starr, right? Look at Mark Vetri. Look at Todd Carmichael. These guys are taking, I don't want to say taking advantage of, but we're actually accelerating this fast burn of this revolution. And pick an arena, if you're an entrepreneur, pick an arena that has some bandwidth, right? I met a guy who made bronze bananas. And I thought, shit, there's a dude who makes bronze bananas. I mean, this is the thing, right? So what do? I make bronze fruit. I'm like, really? You make bronze? The bandwidth of that is really narrow. It's really hard to start a revolution in that category. But coffee, a bit wider than bronze fruit. I mean, it is our, I'm talking about American, Philadelphia being American, it is the quintessential American beverage. It is part of our existence. It is part of who we are. Check it. 90% of people of coffee drinking age drink coffee. That's amazing, right? We can't get 90% of the people to agree that like frosting is sweet. You know, we can't, that the sky is higher than the, you know, this 90% is pretty amazing, right? Not only that, but they drink 17 ounces of this stuff a day. 17 ounces. Now, if you look at wine, beer, juice, soda, you can take them all and you combine them, that's lower than 17 ounces. This is a wide bandwidth. And it belongs in that even wider bandwidth of food. I've got a good friend, you saw a picture of him. His name is Hamdi. In 2007, he whipped up an authentic, real batch of yogurt. He was a Turk from the mountains. He was a herdsman. And he named his company after herdsman. It's called Chobani. I don't know if you've noticed the kind of revolution that just doing that thing right. You know where he did that from? Rochester, New York. Hey man, sorry, so like Rochester's our frickin' sister city, right? You don't have to go to Silicon Valley to start a revolution. You don't have to go to New York City. In fact, it's really expensive to do it from there, I'm telling you. You do it from places like Philadelphia. And that's why our founders of this country chose this city to do it as well. Positive I didn't write any of that down either. Okay, so I know where I'll go. My wife is going to kill me. She told me not to do this. Todd, I know you're just going to go haywire. 22 years ago, when I opened this cafe, right, I swung the door open, and we had, I remember, $286 left of my funds to start this coffee roasting company. And I had this vision. And I fell in love with this city for many, many reasons. But I like the idea of its past and its history. And about 3 weeks in, right, by the way, I had like beautiful hair, and I was ripped. And, okay, I'm making that up, all right. A writer from Philadelphia Magazine came in, you know, and they had one main question. They had this question. They said, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And it struck me. It struck me so unusual that a city of this quality, this character would even think to ask that kind of question. But it's kind of where we were. But I answered the question in 2 phases. First one, I said, I'm here in Philadelphia to create a foundation for a coffee roasting company to be the premier coffee roasting company in the United States of America. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to invite the United States of America, all of America, 276,540,000 coffee drinkers to Philly for coffee. I mean it. America is going to come to Philly for their coffee. This is what I want to do. What I should have said would have been cooler, right? I should have said, I'm here to start a revolution. Because it's kind of what I've figured out over time. Now let me tell you how I'm going to do it. I got 5 minutes and 40. I got 40 seconds to do it. But we're going to have to go back in time. Let me give you a little history. I know that sounds really boring. Okay, put yourself in 1900. It was a different America back then. Philadelphia existed. I think one of the significant differences is we had hundreds of thousands of large mammals pooping in the streets and peeing. And people, I mean, we were a filthy bunch. What we did to heat our homes is we burnt like raw coal. I don't know if you've ever seen raw coal burn, but man, it can leave like some smoke in the air. So the air was filthy, dirty. It could make you sick, and you didn't breathe it. When you thought air, you didn't think like me, like fresh air and like leaves. Like when I hug my little son who's 4, right, when he's playing in the yard, and I smell that fresh air that's trapped in his hair. It's the smell of love and freshness and beauty. In 1900, it wasn't that. You didn't want air to touch your food because you didn't. At that time, to be a coffee roaster, they were everywhere because people roasted coffee in these little balls like this with coal, or in pans, and they also roasted your nuts and your seeds. They took care of your spices, and you took your coffee home in a little paper bag. That's how you did it, until this dude came along. And believe it or not, this is a real guy's name, Mr. Folgers, right? You didn't think it actually is a dude, but what he figured out is that he could pull a vacuum in a can, and he could suspend ground coffee in it with no air. None of that foul stuff is touching your ground coffee. And this guy, he changed the way America interacted with their coffee. He started a massive revolution, a revolution of epic proportions, and he built an absolute empire. Then maybe a generation later, another guy took it. And by the way, pulling a vacuum, like back then, is like today, like, yeah, I pulled a black hole in a paper bag. You know, it's like it was so outer space. It was so, there's a black hole in there, some coffee too, so careful. The next guy got outer space too. Right? He took plastic, which was a brand new thing, right? And he blow molded it. And I just say that because I like the sound of blow molding. Doesn't that sound violent? Okay, so he would blow mold these machines and he put some electronic in it, and he used another outer space thing, gravity. He would use gravity to go through the paper filter and create coffee. And his name was Mr. Coffee. I don't think his actual name was Mr. Coffee. If it were, that'd be really crazy, right? Okay, that was a rebranding, my thing. He rebranded. And he changed the way we actually interacted with our coffee. Every home in America. And then 2 guys came along. God, I hope they're not in this audience. And they're both green. Green Mountain, Green Mermaid, if you know what I'm saying. Now, Green Mountain is Brian. He's a really sweet guy. He did an aerospace thing, too. What he did was, he's going to brew coffee in a capsule. Like, you're orbiting the planet. And then you're eating your dinner through a tube. And then you take this capsule. You don't even see the coffee. Right? And he changed the way you actually experience your coffee. Did you know that half of the coffee in the United States of America is actually brewed through one of those capsules? It's crazy, right? I don't think it's ever made anyone happy, but you have your coffee. It's like the coffee of the DMV, right? But you gotta go, you gotta have it. I'm just saying. What's a shame is a lot of us recognize that we're also punching Mother Nature in the groin every time we brew one of those things, right? We circle the globe 11.5 times a year with those little plastic things. Other guy was his first name was Howard? Yeah. I used to work at that company way back in 1982. I'm sure I had hair in 82, though. When they had 3 cafes. And it was so exciting. We knew something was happening. It was just, and on these bags was names like Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Tanzania. There was this excitement. And his idea was revolutionary, too. He goes, I'm going to build a cafe on every single corner. And then I'm going to make people stand in line for their coffee. And he changed the way coffee. Talk about the DMV, though, right? I'm just saying. No, I love both these guys. But the question becomes, Philadelphia, maybe these 2 companies have kind of run their race. Maybe, just maybe they're too big to lead anymore. And that's the question. So you look at that as a coffee guy, if I were, right? And I would think, man, maybe this is my time to spark my revolution. So symbolically, David, this is for you. I am hereby declaring, I'm lighting the fuse, sound effects and everything. I got 48 seconds. The revolution. Now, how am I going to do that? I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to make you stand in line at cafes, and I'm not going to make you use plastic. What I'm going to do is I make each and every single last one of you a crafted drink, clean label, no chemicals, no bull crap, pure, gift of nature milk, coffee extracted in a way that you've never had it, cold pressed, not those high echelon acidic flavors that punch you in the stomach, not those carbony flavors. I'm going to mix them up in a way that when you open that can, it creates a textured, luxurious, naturally sweetened beverage that I'm calling draft latte. That's how I'm going to do it. So, to recap, there were lots of horses pooping in the street. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to go that far back. Good. This sort of revolution naturally starts in a city like ours, in Philadelphia. And I would like to think that the company that is the foundation of that is called La Colombe. And the guy that touched all that off, it's the same answer that I gave that kid in that class so long ago, is me. My name is Todd Carmichael.